there's the consumer mindset side of that. The other side of that is the entrepreneurial side, which is, how do I have to think about this? Because now that I'm thinking about my product differently, I start to worry about how good does that thing need to be. Because I'm building something that doesn't necessarily currently exist. I need to think about how good it needs to be, because I've got to be able to afford to start this business. Okay? So there's a good enough principle. And it's really pretty simple. It's really pretty powerful. It's really iterative. It's really freeing. It'll excite you, it'll make you happy, but it'll make people who don't understand how to do this nervous. But you don't have to worry about them. You're the CEO, it's your company. Okay? The principle is it needs to be excellent where it must be and good enough where it can be. All your product has to do is make holes. It can be a very rough product if it makes holes and fulfills the other requirements of simplicity. It doesn't have to be state-of-the-art design for beauty straight out of the box. That actually can come later. It doesn't have to anticipate every single use the current drill satisfies straight out of the box. It has to make holes. That's it. Okay? That's all it has to do. But if we think back about our early adopter consumers, and I'm going to ask you guys to raise your hands again. The early adopter consumers, raise your hands. Come on, put them up high, because people need to see this. Look how few of them there are. Okay? So when you start making your good enough product, they will pay more for it. They will help you get the business started, but you will run out of them quickly. Okay? Which means you need to go to the next group, which has a higher order set of needs in order to begin building your business. So you need to improve it. That's how we get on that curve that creates sophistication and opportunity. So fundamentally, it's impossible to avoid that curve. Okay? You can grow a business a long way before it becomes being detrimental. Okay? But it's important that you understand the difference between where your product needs to be excellent and where it needs to be good enough. Did anybody in the room, just as a cross-check on this, happen to buy a Pebble watch, a Pebble smartwatch? I did. Anybody else? Anybody else buy an Apple Watch? Okay, how about the first fitness trackers? I mean, you name it. The first ones, not like one yesterday, but the first ones, okay? We know all of those had problems. Pebble had problems, iWatch had problems. The first fitness trackers had problems. They didn't have the full feature set that you expect today. That's the good enough principle at work, right? The Pebble watch was really, I mean, you would have to agree, it's really kind of ugly, right? But it was the first smartwatch that was kind of viable. And so there are many, many indications of that. And so if you're an early adopter, you're used to seeing the kinds of trade-offs we're talking about. If you're not an early adopter, one of the things as a CEO, this whole thing is going to make you nervous about is you're used to seeing the perfected thing. Okay? And so your thought process is going to drive you immediately to perfection, which is a whole lot of expense and cost and increased risk for your business. Do you follow what I'm saying? Does this make sense? Yes, ma'am.
One thing early on that I discovered in the development. Okay, thank you. So one of the things that I discovered early on in the development of my collection was it's like trying to figure out where do I change the product and where do I change the language?
Right.
And so that has actually been a constant challenge in the development of our product, because it's like, when I first say, yes, this is an infinity scarf that blocks electromagnetic frequencies, I lose people at electromagnetic, and they're like, what? I don't understand what you're saying. And so I'm like, okay, like, how do I dumb the language down a little bit to get to a level where it's good enough and where the consumer can understand exactly what it is and what the benefits are. And so that has been a challenge for me. And if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. And it seems like overly simplistic right now, but she walked right into, there's a statement here at the end of the presentation that fundamentally says copy is everything. Okay, so startup entrepreneurs, even in the medical space, right? You've got to learn to write about your product in a way that investors and buyers understand it. And what happens is we tend to discount that, or we tend to outsource that to agencies and other sorts of people. And there's a danger in that, and the danger is the loss of understanding of what you're trying to do along the way. There's also a danger in that people who don't understand what you're trying to do will default to making it look pretty rather than making it intuitively understandable. And as startup CEOs, where you need to be is making sure the communication is crisp, intuitive, and clear. And again, the thing that will distract you if you find yourself not an early adopter and you're up on that perfection curve is crisp, clear communication. Looks like really sophisticated communication to some people, which is your EMF problem, okay? The consumer who's dissatisfied with that stuff and wants the new thing, is ready to actually pay more to get it, has a different approach to thinking and buying. And you really need to unpack that. You need to find out what they think. So spending time with them, understanding how they're responding, what language they use, what language comes easy to them is super important.
So I'm trying to grasp this mentally. So you have this gap here. If this gap is not big enough, there's no market for...
Well, yeah. No, actually, okay. So that's a super good question. Yeah, that's a graduate course level question. He didn't realize it at the time, but that is a super good question. So fundamentally, when you're in markets where there isn't a big gap, you're in an early phase of the market. Okay, a market that is still, there is still a battle going on for control of the market. And so what the market hasn't decided yet is who got the job right. Okay? So what you're going to find if you really start mucking around in those things is her point. The language isn't clear. It isn't crisp. The way the product is architected and designed against the good enough principle isn't right yet. And I would argue the VR market's there right now. Okay? The virtual reality market. Nobody wants a big, clunky headset, right? Anyway, so that's the thing. So the battle you're in is not a battle for sophistication and perfection. It's for getting the job right. Do you see what I'm saying? That's a really important distinction, and that's like an 800 level course, right? But that's it.
Well, I was just thinking, like, so you have a product that is already owned by a big company. It's sleek, it's simple, it does what the customer wants it to do.
Right.
There's no room to go, like, trying to think, and like something like, it may be a little cumbersome, like PayPal or something like that, like a big company that does processing, like, or Venmo, that's owned by PayPal, something that
Bitcoin,
yeah, or Bitcoin.
but it ain't perfected.
Right.
Right. So the point I'm trying to make to you is even underneath PayPal, there is, because time marches on, there is a gap. Right? And the current argument under PayPal is Bitcoin. Okay?
That undercuts.
Yeah.
It has a potential
And Venmo is still making its case. Okay? These things don't happen in 6-month periods of time. These things happen in decade-length periods of time. Okay? So this hurry up and get it done sense that we all have is a little bit of an illusion and does a little bit of damage to entrepreneurs because they all think they have to get it done right now, and there really is more time to play. What they really need to be focused on is getting the job right. You know, so when you take apart payment systems, you want to look at what banks are doing because banks are getting creative payment systems. You look at PayPal, you look at Venmo, and you look at Bitcoin, and you start saying, what are the consumers saying about what they need to have happen with payment that is currently not available? Okay, and not the sophisticated, right? Not the sophisticated ones again, the simple ones, except in the place of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's like Tesla. Bitcoin's coming backwards through the system rather than forwards. Tesla came backwards.
They have blockchain already.
Okay, which is, I was afraid somebody was going to ask a question like that because there are outlying examples where they actually go backwards. But the bulk of them go forwards, and you're dealing with a consumer with a different need. Bitcoin's going to enable voting. Bitcoin's going to enable payments across international borders. It's going to be a global economy thing, right? So there are a lot of, you just got to change your mindset in a lot of different ways to be able to think about what these things do. And we're back to what? You see where we come back to every time is our mindset, and it's who that target consumer is, and it's why I started out with you guys saying, be careful thinking you're the target consumer. You may have an idea that appeals to a target consumer and really want to work on it because you've got the background, technology, understanding, etc., which is all good and important. But be careful thinking you know who they are, right? You've got to really dig around in that. Yeah.
All right, my issue is that I'm not creating a product, I'm just enhancing a better service. So how do you think outside of the box to make sure that you're providing your customer what they need?
If your business is an improvement over an existing system, you're actually in a situation where the odds of success are low. Okay, and it depends on how tuned in the incumbents are to the needs of the consumers that you're serving. Because if they're tuned in and you're doing an improvement, they make their living on improvements. Right, so the odds of them saying, look at what she's doing, she's appealing to these consumers, I can make these 3 changes and do that, are very high. And they will. You know, as time marches on, technology gets cheaper, the speed with which they can adapt to what you're doing gets faster and faster. So what I would encourage you to do is look at what you can do that's different, that appeals to a consumer that's overserved by the current market. The current market is missing their needs. That's my talk. That may not fit what you want to do, but that's the point I'm making for entrepreneurial success in general. Entrepreneurs can peel off pieces of markets. It does happen. It's just hard and expensive.
I was just going to say one element that you didn't talk about necessarily was that often the early adopters are also key influencers. So their impact
Right.
to you long term from your business isn't just their volume that you sell to, but they're the ones who get the word out and can actually be your ambassadors of your
They can.
thing.
Yeah, she's very right. Thank you very much. Yeah, they are loudspeakers. They are, and if they travel in packs, there's usually 1 in a pack of 10, and 5 of the 10 look to them for guidance on what to buy. So that's really important.